Good morning, and welcome back to the Morning Endurance Call. I'm Keith Erwood, and this is a free, daily, 15-minute or less leadership ritual for business owners, executives, and preparedness professionals who want to build stronger businesses, think more clearly under pressure, and lead with more clarity in uncertain times. Each morning, we spend a few minutes talking about how to build stronger businesses, stronger decision making, and stronger leadership in a world where disruption is no longer rare. Today's topic is an important one. Most risk registers do not help leaders decide. Let me be clear from the start. I'm not saying risk registers are useless. They can absolutely have value, and they help capture information, organize concerns, and document known issues. But here's the problem. A risk register is not the same thing as risk leadership. And in many organizations, risk registers become a substitute for real thinking. They become long spreadsheets. They become administrative exercises. They become collections of entries, color codes, rankings, and categories. And yet, when real leadership decisions need to be made, those same documents often do very little to help. That is the issue. Because the goal of risk work should not be to create a list. The goal should be to improve clarity, prioritization, and decision making. That is a very different standard. A lot of risk registers fail because they are built to document risk, not drive action. They answer questions like, what could go wrong? Who submitted this item? What category does it fit into? What score was assigned? But they often fail to answer the questions leaders actually need answered, such as, what matters most right now? What could materially disrupt the business? What consequences would be most severe? What requires action first? What is leadership supposed to decide? And what exposures are we truly carrying if nothing changes? That is where many organizations get stuck. They have risk visibility, but not risk usefulness. And those are not the same thing. An executive team does not need a 75-line spreadsheet thrown in front of them with equal formatting and vague scoring. They need to understand, where is the business most exposed? What are the most meaningful disruptions? What assumptions are weak? What needs ownership? What choices need to be made? That is what good risk leadership supports. This matters because when pressure rises, leaders do not need more noise. They need more clarity. And one of the biggest mistakes organizations make is assuming that because risk has been documented, it has been managed. It has not. Documenting risk is not the same as reducing it. Documenting risk is not the same as preparing for it. Documenting risk is not the same as deciding what to do about it. This is one of the reasons I often say that preparedness is not about volume. It is about usefulness. Clarity over confusion. You do not get stronger because you listed more things. You get stronger because you identified what matters most and acted accordingly. So let's talk about why many risk registers fall short. First, they're often too broad. They mix together everything from small operational annoyances to truly material business threats, and they present them in a way that makes it difficult to distinguish signal from noise. Second, they often rely on scoring that appears precise but is not necessarily decision useful. A risk may be labeled medium, high, or critical, but what does that really mean for leadership? Does it threaten revenue? Does it affect customer service? Does it create regulatory exposure? Does it threaten life safety? Does it impact recovery capability? Does it disrupt operations for 1 hour, 1 day, or 1 week or longer? Without business consequence scoring alone, scoring alone is not enough. Third, many risk registers lack context. A risk entry may tell you that vendor disruption is possible, or that cyber risk exists, or that a key person dependency exists. But it may not tell you how exposed the business really is, what the downstream impact would be, and whether a workaround exists, whether response capability is in place, or whether leadership has already accepted more risk than they realize. Fourth, many risk registers do not clearly connect to action. This is a big one. If a risk register does not drive ownership, mitigation, contingency thinking, or strategic decision making, then it is often just a record-keeping exercise. And finally, many risk registers are built too far away from how the business actually functions. They may be disconnected from operations, disconnected from business impact, disconnected from recovery realities, disconnected from executive priorities. When that happens, the document may exist, but it does not help the organization endure. And that is the word I want to connect here today: endurance. Endurance in business is the ability to continue operating, make sound decisions, recover intelligently, and keep moving forward under pressure over time. A useful risk process supports endurance because it helps leaders see where the business is fragile, where assumptions are weak, and where action is required before disruption tests the organization. A weak risk register does not build endurance. It creates the appearance of control without always strengthening actual capability. That distinction matters. So, what should leaders and organizations do instead? They should ask better questions. Instead of asking only, what risks do we have? Ask, what could materially interrupt our ability to operate? Instead of asking only, how should this risk be scored? Ask, what consequence would this create if it happened? Instead of asking only, who owns the entry? Ask, who owns the decision, the mitigation, and the response? Instead of asking only, is this on the register? Ask, does leadership understand what this means for the business? That is a much better standard. A useful risk register should help leadership do at least 5 things. See the most meaningful exposures clearly, understand business consequence, prioritize what matters, assign real ownership, support action, and better decisions. If it is not doing those things, then it needs to be improved. And this is especially important for business owners and executives, because you do not need more documentation for its own sake. You need decision support. You need something that helps you determine where to invest, what to strengthen, what to question, and what to prepare for. That is the real value. Now let me make this even more practical. If you are looking at your current risk register, here are a few signs it may not be helping enough. if it is too long to be useful in a leadership discussion, if the scoring is unclear or inconsistently applied, if the risks are not connected to business impact, if no one knows what action comes next, if it is reviewed periodically but rarely influences a real decision, if the document feels active but preparedness still feels weak. Those are warning signs. A better approach is to make sure your risk work connects directly to leadership use. That means connecting risk to business impact, operational consequence, financial effect, dependency exposure, recovery capabilities, and executive decision making. That is when risk starts to become strategic. And this is a good reminder for practitioners too. If you work in business continuity, IT disaster recovery, crisis management, or risk management, your value is not just in creating documents. Your value is helping the business see clearly and prepare intelligently. That is what leaders need from you. Not more complexity, more clarity. So here is the leadership takeaway for today. A risk register is only valuable if it helps leaders decide what matters, what it means, and what must be done. That is the standard. And here's today's question for you. Does your risk process create clarity, or does it mostly create documentation? That is not a small question. That is a leadership question. Because in the end, businesses do not endure because they listed their risks. They endure because they understood them well, enough to prepare, decide, and act. Thank you for joining me today on the Morning Endurance Call. If this kind of thinking is useful to you, join the free endurance community. That is where I'm sharing additional resources, tools, insights, and ongoing conversations for people who want to build stronger businesses and stronger leadership through disciplined preparedness. The link will be in the description below. You can also go to members.erwoodgroup.com. Tomorrow we'll be talking about the difference between seeing risk and managing risk, because awareness alone is not enough. Until then, think clearly, prepare deliberately, and lead with endurance. Bye now.